we really looked into texture. Texture was one of the ways that we feel like we can beat competitors. And so what we did is I like to call it Ben and Jerryizing the product, right? So we took a look at, how can we make oatmeal not just mushy? So we do a mix of oats. There's an instant oat and then a whole grain oat, which gives it a better mouthfeel. And then we also took a look at puffed amaranths. Those are in all of the products. Puffed amaranth is which of those little tiny beads of amaranth that are puffed and popped. So that gives a great texture. They have ground flax, which gives it a really nice, again, texture, focusing on that. And then that's the base for all of them. And then what we did is added what I like to think of as really large pieces, and you've tasted it. So we have really big berries. We've used a mix of freeze-dried and dried berries in there. And then we layered on with some really cool flavors like cardamom and ginger, just hints of them so that it spices it up just a little bit. And we didn't take it too far.
Welcome to Winning at Work, the podcast for foodies, founders, and food and beverage professionals. If you wanted to discover a new brand, a new food or beverage to try, there are literally thousands of companies out there. It is very difficult to do that. That's why we curate the different, the better, and the special brands here each and every week, so you don't have to do the heavy lifting. If you're a founder and you're looking to connect with other like-minded executives, we make that very easy. And if you just work in the food and beverage industry and you're looking for fresh inspiration, we have that here in spades.
This episode is sponsored by Temple. Congratulations, you're selling in retail. But the competition is fierce and your brand is surrounded by similar products. How will consumers find you? Let Temple show you an innovative retail sales solution. Click on the Attract Consumers link below. Need to attract great employees? Click on the Hire Now below and we'll show you how to use your culture to help you stand out. Stay tuned for this week's episode.
Welcome to Winning at Work, everybody. One of those, or at least it was for me, one of my favorite kind of comfort foods growing up as a kid was oatmeal. I liked oatmeal. I also like cream of wheat. I don't think many people eat cream of wheat anymore, but that was definitely one of those that I loved. I never really thought this was a category that was going to be, improved upon. Honestly, I hadn't really thought much about it. But Christine Keller, the CEO and co-founder of Moodify, the good mood food, she and her team are taking a stab at it. Welcome in, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of this. I've listened to, I think, probably 10 of the podcasts, and I love listening to all the fascinating stories and the people you bring together. I'm a longtime food geek, so I'm totally interested in every person and what they have to say that I've heard on your story, and I'm excited to share ours. And I think it's funny that you brought up oatmeal because it is a thing. As I've entered this category, and I'll tell you some reasons why we entered it in a few minutes, but one of the things that I found out is there are avid oatmeal eaters. People eat oatmeal every single day and love it and keep coming back to it. And you're right, it's can be boring. It's not that exciting of a category. Yeah, boring can be good. Yeah, it's not that exciting of a category. And truthfully, there's not been a lot of innovation in it as well. For years, Quaker Oats, you've got all of the standards, which, they're okay products, but they add a lot of sugar. And so we sort of set out to disrupt that with some different ideas about oatmeal and morning and breakfast and your brain and just how we can all eat really good, healthy food. And we're starting with oatmeal with our brand.
It's funny, you bring up the commercial side of the business and the sugar, and that's a little known secret that sugar is this extender. It allows them to get more product by using sugar, but then unfortunately what's happening is sugar is reprogramming your palate, and now suddenly you want it in everything, and we just don't need that much. One of the things that, first of all, people really need to go to your website because the colors that you have for these, do you have, is it 6 flavors or 4?
We have 6 flavors.
The colors that you have used and the kind of artwork that you've added to each of these individual servings. They're a little more than 2 ounces, it looks like, roughly. They're a little different, based on which one. If you were to see this online or see it on shelf, I mean, it's definitely going to stand out. But I want to read something that you have here on the back, and this kind of struck me, is Moodify, eat well and change your mind, a delicious way to nourish your body and mind with foods that can naturally boost your mood. So I think it's clever, the name that you're using, but you're also giving people this idea that, look, some of the stuff that you're putting in your body is kind of messing with your head a little bit, and if you start choosing better food, you can help, modify some of these behaviors. How did you come up with this idea? A little buzzed oatmeal. You've got so many clever little names here.
Wow, you packed a lot in one question.
I know.
So,
I'm just going to sit back and let you finish the podcast.
Yeah, well, I could. I love to talk about Moodify food. So I guess let's start with that idea of nourishing your mind with natural ingredients to boost your mood. The idea came to me. Well, first, let me start out, and I hope I'm not going to get too long-winded with it, but let me start out with my background in history, because that gives some context to where I am now and where we landed with this. I've had a really long run in the food industry, bringing brands and products to market for large companies, startups. I've worked for product innovation agencies. I've worked for even large grocery retailer on the product development and branding side of things. So I have a long career in food. I'm always curious about what people eat, why they eat it, what they eat. And I've really worked in the area of healthy foods. That's sort of my spot. Because I know and learned very early on that really working with my diet can kind of change my outlook and my physical ability to do many, many things. So this idea was born, and I'll talk about packaging and the names and all of that as we go. But this idea was really born from a piece of work that I was doing for a major manufacturer during COVID. And they were asking the question and wanted me to give a perspective and a paper on what were people eating? They had to change their diets. We all had to change our diets so quickly, or where we get our food and how we were sourcing our foods and what we were eating. We were eating comfort food. We were doing convenient foods. We were just trying to, basically deal with what was going on in the world. And this company really wanted to know how people were changing their eating habits, what things that they adopted, what benefits did they want from their food, and sort of what things would stick. And so I went deep into the hole, like I do when I'm doing research paper and coming up with perspective. And I found a study out there that was surveying, I think it was 2,000 people, and asking them, what things are they looking for? What benefits are they looking for in their food after COVID and beyond COVID? So it was a perfect study for me to be looking at to formulate some ideas. And as I read through this, I think it was a 60-page long paper with all the statistics out there that you could imagine. I was sort of struck by, one fact. I wasn't struck by the fact that people wanted to reduce sugar and increase protein. That seemed natural. Like I've seen that a million times. But I was really struck by the fact that in this study, they said that people actually, and it was above reduction of sugar and increase of protein, that people were looking for foods to support their brain and mental health. And that put me back just a bit, because I had never read that statistic in all of my years of doing food research and consumer research. Never once had read that. And so without sounding kind of cliche, I went to bed that night after reading the study and just kept thinking about it and went to sleep. And, I'm not going to say it came in a dream, but I woke up with that completely on my mind and just lay there thinking, good mood food, like, someone's got to be doing this. It's such a need, because there's this, whole idea of nutritional psychology that really points out the benefits that foods can bring to your brain. So I woke up and got out of bed and immediately searched good mood food. And I figured I would have, a long list of products that were out there that could do this. And oddly enough, there are some beverages out on the market, but there really wasn't anybody who was leaning into this idea of how foods can impact your brain. And I honestly trademarked Good Mood Foods at that, not trademark. I got the website at that moment. It wasn't used. We have a different name now, Moodify. Yeah. So then I kept thinking about it. I couldn't get my mind off of it. And I started thinking about what I knew about nutritional psychology and the foods that could actually, have an impact on your brain. The other thing I loved about this idea is it's not just about foods you eat that can impact your mood and your brain. It's about the intention too. So this idea to me has two parts to it. One is really about the nutritional value of food, and the other is to start thinking about mental health. We've all known someone or have had mental health struggles in our lives, but it's a hard thing to talk about, and it's a hard thing to take steps to get to, a place of mental clarity. And I don't propose to say that food is going to be, and exercise too, are going to be the things that are going to change your mental health, because they are just one component. And I believe the sort of, basic component of what we can start doing to, improve our mental health. In addition, beyond that, there are lots of other treatments for mental health. So we're not trying to say this is a replacement for that, but what we are trying to say is, let's start thinking about how we eat and start thinking about what we eat and put in our body, because it definitely impacts our brain and outlook on life. And you can make big changes by just starting there as a foundation.
Yeah, these are good practical steps.
Exactly. We believe like little steps are like the biggest thing you can do. And, mental health becomes sort of this all-encompassing thing that's super scary. And, reaching out to professionals on this is hard. So, it's about just deciding and thinking about your impact with food. Just at this point, that's kind of all we're starting to talk about. So with that all in mind, when I had the idea, I thought, okay, well, what foods could we work with? What could we play with? Obviously, you have avocados and salmon, which have high omega-3s, which can impact your brain and boost your mental clarity. That wasn't a business that I was real interested in. Then I thought, okay, well, beverages could be a good one, but I quickly stopped because I know how hard that industry is for very, many, many reasons. Beverage is
very
just
difficult to be successful in beverage.
It is. And that wasn't, beverage and fish and avocados and fresh foods, which I believe in, are helpful. They weren't really getting to the essence of the matter of like, well, how do I start thinking about this? And so I changed my thinking completely. Instead of thinking about ingredients, I was like, well, what day part would be best? And it was natural for me to say breakfast, right? Start in the morning.
That's what came to me. That's exactly, I kind of thought, why not start first thing in the morning? And where do you typically have an oatmeal? Now, once you end up having it on your shelf, then you realize it's a fun thing to go and just grab for a snack anytime, right?
Exactly.
But I think we're all programmed to think, let's go get that nice thing of warm oatmeal in the morning. I like to add a little milk to mine, just give it the kind of consistency that I want. And that's how I would do it. But I think that's smart to kind of start them in the morning. Are there particular ingredients though that you've kind of honed in on that you think are missing from some of the foods that you've kind of added in?
Well, actually, we took a really interesting approach to that because I really wanted to be 100% natural. And I do think that there are some adaptogens and different things that you can put in that will help you. And we work with some things like probiotics. We started with a CBD product, which is no longer available. But really what I do know about grains and nuts and coffee and ginger and berries, those are all things that provide antioxidants and can impact your serotonin and dopamine. So it was pretty easy for me once I started, pulling apart all the ingredients that have some properties to know that it's actually just real whole food that's natural and without a whole lot of sugar that can come together in a really delicious way.
You're saying adaptogens are not natural? I mean, I'm not like an expert with adaptogens. Okay. But you'd have to add that. But you'd have to add that in rather than just the natural ingredients that you would use in the making of an oatmeal and the flavor of whichever one you've made. Like this one is a little buzzed. This one that says a little buzz, which I think is a really clever little name because people think of, either coffee or maybe, a little buzz gives you different ideas, but you've got cinnamon, cocoa nibs, and coffee with cocoa nibs and cinnamon. That's kind of clever. How much caffeine is in this one? Very
little. Enough. It's about the equivalent of a half a cup of coffee. So enough to sort of get your brain pumping, but you still, it is the caffeine that you have there, and caffeine is a stimulant. So that's why that's in there. We decided not to work with adaptogens for only one reason, and I don't know how much experience you have with adaptogens, but they're not great tasting. And when we started exploring adaptogens in our products,
yeah,
and
you end
then
up
we
with
have to start
masking, and then you end up adding more things to mask it, right? So it's like
exactly. Yeah. And we feel like the products, we really think about food, the way it tastes is sort of, it has to taste good. That's one of our top product development tenets. It has to taste amazing.
That's a staple, no doubt. Wow. Apparently this is about a $2.5 billion market. According to, if you can trust what you find on the internet, roughly internationally or globally, probably half of that maybe in the US, maybe 1.3 billion, somewhere in there. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, close to 2.
Some of that data I found might have been a little bit outdated. So you've got a really big marketplace that you can play in. Where are you currently working on distribution? Are you DTC? Are you breaking into retail? What's the current situation?
So we are DTC, although that wasn't our first go-to-market strategy. Our true go-to-market strategy is retail. And then we started our test market in Denver. And the question we had there was, how's our brand? Do people connect with it? How's our food? What channels work for us? So we went out there into the market to find out, and we discovered some things that we didn't expect. Denver is where I'm from, first of all. And Denver's a great test market for consumers because they're not the coastal consumer. So their tastes are a little more, mainstream, I would say, but they still edge on the healthy side of things. If you've ever met anyone from Denver, they probably run marathons and do all sorts of crazy stuff. So we wanted to look at people who are interested in health. And then Denver's just a great test market all around. So we launched there, and we went into some independent retailers, some hotels, some college campuses. And we found that those hotels and college campuses were very, very lucrative for us. And it was wonderful, and cafes as well. So we bolted on the food service strategy. Once we learned that, what was really amazing to me in as many products as I've launched in my career, is that we didn't change the product at all or the branding. So I was surprised by that.
Well, what's great here is that it's a self-serve.
Mm-hmm.
It's self-contained.
Yep.
So this plays really well in college, and any place where someone is just not in their home, and they can just easily pick it up, boil water, and now they've got it. I mean, that's a nice, it simplifies your business. It simplifies the delivery, I would think.
It does. And it also, I think, offers the consumer a really good choice where there might only be one or two versus, being in grocery retail, which is up against all of the, competitors that you mentioned. The retail markets are doing well for us as well. But it was just one of those things that I hadn't expected for food service to be that strong. Once we finished the test market, we launched into Southern California. We think that's a great market for our products. And we've so far gotten into, all the ones you want to: Bristol Farms, Gelson's, Lassen's, Lazy Acres.
Oh, Gelson's. I just had a conversation about Gelson's the other day. I love that grocery store.
Unreal. They're such a joy to work with.
Oh, what I should get paid from Gelson's. I mean, literally as much as I promote them. I mean, I'm on the East Coast, and that's just a Southern California, right? Oh, absolutely gorgeous high-end grocery store. And again, I told you, I'm in the mountains of North Carolina, and we have a low-end Ingles. We felt so ridiculous when we went there to visit my mom, and we we were in the Gelsons and I was walking around starstruck. I'm like, I've been in the mountains too long. It's just a grocery store, but it's more than
But
it's amazing. Yeah.
it's
That's
amazing. We're super
fantastic
honored
for
to be
you.
there.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great
And
for
then
you.
we're launching Safeway Denver in December, I believe, end of December. So that's really exciting. And that'll be a really good market test for us to be in a large chain against all the hard competitors with our products. And so I'm excited to do that too.
Well, in the Southern California market, what's working and when you're looking at marketing or kind of sales strategies to get those consumers to try it?
So right now we're working on just promoting the product to drive trial at shelf. And we're starting to do some demos in San Diego coming up in the next month. Demos work really well for us. But really it's price promotion. That's, as a small company, we don't have huge marketing budgets. And so we're playing there and spending our money and just supporting the accounts as strong as we can. And as you pointed out, our graphics are really stand out and we look different from everyone on the shelf.
You do.
What we found is when we can drive trial, our repeat's very high. And you've tasted the products and you probably know.
Oh, I didn't talk about that enough. I love them. I did not mention that, but yes, great samples. And like I said, I love oatmeal, and I was excited to see all the different flavors that you had come up with, which you're kind of just used to seeing the kind of the garden variety ones that you get from the big brands, or you can just get like a plain one and kind of mix it up yourself. But you've done it, they're all contained in here. You've got one called Gone Bananas, almonds, coconut, cinnamon. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And I like that you're using this packaging that is really lightweight. Mm-hmm. People are looking for things that they feel like are going to, compost pretty quickly. And It looks like 35% post-consumer recycled fiber. So, you're doing your best, to reuse, where you can to make your containers. Mm-hmm. That's good. Do you run into problems when you use more than 35%?
Yes, because of the microwave heating and the hot water can break
it's
it
not
down.
as stable.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of the threshold. Interesting.
Yeah. And with our development process, one of our tenets, along with, ingredients that are good for your brain and healthy and very low sugar, which I'll talk about in a second, but we really looked into texture. Texture was one of the ways that we feel like we can beat competitors. And so what we did is we said, okay, let's eat. I like to call it Ben and Jerryizing the product, right? So we took a look at, how can we make oatmeal not just mushy? So we do a mix of oats. There's an instant oat and then a whole grain oat, which gives it a better mouthfeel. And then we also took a look at puffed amaranths. Those are in all of the products. Puffed amaranth is, which are those little tiny beads of amaranth that are puffed and popped. So that gives a great texture. They have ground flax, which gives it a really nice, again, texture, focusing on that. And then that's the base for all of them. And then what we did is added what I like to think of as really large pieces, and you've tasted it. So big pieces of nuts and fruits.
Yes.
The toasted coconut,
that really comes through.
Yeah. And the berries, we have really big berries. We've used a mix of freeze-dried and dried berries in there. And then we layered on with some really cool flavors like cardamom and ginger, just hints of them so that it spices it up just a little bit. And we didn't take it too far. Some of the early ones were a little bit too far because I like big flavors, but we backed up from that a little bit. And then we decided we didn't want it to be sweet. And as we were going through the testing process, my nephew was eating it and I was just like, tell me about this. And he said, it's good, but it's not sweet enough. And I thought, well, good. I'm glad it's not sweet enough because it's not intended to be extra sweet. And so on our packaging, you'll see on the lid, it says not too sweet. We're sweetening with dates.
Not too sweet, eat well, change your mind. Well, look, the good news is if you give a great product, people can alter it if they choose.
Exactly.
If they want. But again, to your point, the mouthfeel was really good on these. And I really like that you could kind of feel the different textures. And it just wasn't this, again, like an oatmeal that kind of reminds you of a cream of wheat. That definitely.
Or dusty. They're not dusty.
Yes, right. Yeah, and I know exactly what you're referring to. Rip the little lid off of it and pour it in the bowl, and poof. And then, yeah, that's not happening here. Do you have? Well, you kind of hinted at this at the top. So you're positioning yourself as good mood food. So clearly, you could get into some kind of product innovation. And you've got 6 flavors. Have you thought about, or have people started giving you ideas for maybe, brand extensions? And I know it's kind of down the road because you still have to, you want to get your velocities and all that, but.
Well, product development is what I do. So I thought of that on like day 2. And our trademark covers, and I'm excited to get started on it. We have a large mountain to climb before we can get started on it really realistically. But our trademark covers bars and tea and nuts and snacks. I want to keep everything in the breakfast day part. And so for bars, that's another really tough category to get into. Yes. Competitive. So we're thinking about baked oatmeal or breakfast cookies in a different form, but it would be considered a bar under that category. We love the idea of teas. And then I think at that point we can start working with more adaptogens and different things there. But and any kind of nut or fruit snack, I think there's a million options there. So the plan is to sort of broaden out the brand and not just be oatmeal.
Well, before we go, you mentioned that you're starting to do sampling. Talk to us about that. Is that something you do yourself? Do you work with agencies, or do you find, fans that, become ambassadors for you? How is that working?
Well, whenever I can, I like to be the one doing the demos because I learn. I'm a great listener. I love hearing what people have to say about the products, what reactions they have, why they're interested in it, what sticks out to them. So for me, as a brand owner, I love that contact with the consumer. And so whenever I can do it, I do it. Because I can't be everywhere at once. We have some agencies that we work with as well, people that we trust and who love the brand. So yeah, that's how we do it. But whenever I can, I like to be the one.
Yeah, it's just
that feedback's so valuable.
It's just not. It is. It's a gift, but it's just not scalable. So you do work with some agencies to kind of help you get that extra reach. Now you said you didn't have that big of a marketing budget. Would that fall under your marketing budget?
Yeah. And our marketing budget is really solely focused on getting the product in people's mouths, however the trial comes, because the reaction to the product has just been super strong.
That seems to be the silver bullet. I mean, rarely do you hear people say this is the one thing that works. I think sampling is it. I mean, there is no better way to tell your product story than to open your mouth here. Yeah. And then it all comes together.
And be the positive energy. Yeah. Breathe the positive energy. One of my favorite things about doing that is people tell me stories because the premise of what we're talking about and the whole idea and mission of the company is to start talking about brain health and mental health. When people understand that, there's this beautiful, safe sharing space that comes out, and we create an environment where people can talk about that, or they get a look in their eyes, like reflection of a struggle they've had or someone they know has had. And those stories tend to come out. And that's really what we're talking about, because we want to open up that conversation and make people more comfortable talking about struggles and just being, more vulnerable and sharing, because community is a part of our mental health.
I think, and I don't want to, make this overly dramatic, but I do think if it's not an epidemic, it's, kind of approaching that, particularly with the young kids. They have grown up in a way so different than us. I mean, we grew up without laptops, without cell phones in our faces every day, without social media pressure and all these things. We had to go outside and kind of work it out, Yeah. I'm sure there was still processed food, but not as much. So
probably more.
True, right? But the flip side of that was you didn't have all these other kind of issues like what we talked about at the top. Food and exercise is not the only thing. These are just practical steps. So I think, introducing this into kids, at an early age, better food early on is a great idea. And you already talked about opening up your food service, which plays perfectly in with your mission, particularly if you can get into, colleges and those little breaky kind of snack room areas where they can just, grab and go off the shelf. I'm in a hurry. Let's face it, hot water, boom, done. And they didn't fill themselves up with a bunch of sugar before they're heading off to class. I think you're really right on, right over the target, with that kind of thing.
Everything you just said about teenagers is right. There's a special concern, I think, that we have in that issue and area. I think we all share it and see it coming. It's like what to do about it.
We do see it coming.
It's very complicated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a complicated
It is. It's like a big bowl of spaghetti. It's like, how do you pull it apart and just one by one, just one little thing by one. And we've had these conversations with ours.
Yeah. One good thing I do know, and I'm hearing from teenagers right now, is that there are a lot of options to deal with mental health. There's a lot of discussion in schools about it. There's a lot of programs and resources that weren't available when we were young. I think when we were young, if we had struggles and they were there weren't very many options for us to get help. Or it was embarrassing to talk about and no one wanted to talk about it. So I feel like amplifying the conversation is so important and allowing people to just feel comfortable and saying, hey, I'm not okay.
Wonderful. Well, what's the best way for people to find you? What's the website and how do you recommend people start interacting with you? Yeah,
well, www.moodifyfood.com. It's a beautiful website, fun to look at. There's some great tips and tricks and ideas and perspective on our movement. We have a part of our website that's called The Movement. And then you can also order the products from there. They ship in 2 days and they're at your door. We have a mixed case. So if you want to try all of them, that's great. If not, if you find a favorite you like, you have that too. We are not available on Amazon as of yet, just because we've been really focusing on our retail strategy. So best way to get it, if you're not in Southern California or Colorado, is to come to the website. Ask us questions, give us suggestions. We're open. We want to talk. So, yeah.
Well, this is a perfect product, honestly, for direct-to-consumer because it's lightweight and, you're not shipping glass or liquid across the country. And it's shelf stable, so you don't have to worry about that. It can be left outside, with a UPS truck or something. I think you have a lot of benefits going on. Christine, fantastic to just kind of dig in and chat with you a little bit more and to learn more about Moodify and kind of what you're tackling. It's a big issue, and glad to know we got somebody out there working on it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people working on it. We're just trying to do a little bit, do our part on a really important issue. And thank you so much for inviting me and being so open and easy to talk to, and making it fun. As you said before we started, let's have fun with it. So I've had fun and I really appreciate you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Music to my ears. Good. See, that's good feedback for me. There's a live sample for me right there. Christine, thank you so much for joining us today on Winning at Work.
Thank you so much.